There's a moment most men have lived and never had named. You meet a woman who seems like exactly what you've been looking for. She's warm, she's talking about wanting something real, she says all the right things. And something in you wants to believe it. So you do. You accept the presentation without examining the history behind it. You confuse the performance for the person. And then, somewhere in year 1 or year 3, the gap opens. The woman you committed to and the woman she actually is are not the same person. The question is never how that gap appeared. The question is why you couldn't see it coming. Because the signals were there, they're always there. Most men just haven't been taught what to look for. If you want more honest conversations about relationship dynamics nobody else will say out loud, go ahead and subscribe. Here's the core principle. A woman's present behavior tells you what she wants you to see. Her history tells you who she is. By the time a woman is 35, she has a decade of adult choices behind her. Those choices built her, her attachment patterns, her bonding capacity, her relationship skills, how she handles conflict, what she's willing to prioritize. All of it was formed before you arrived. And none of it disappears because she's decided she's ready for commitment now. The mistake most men make is evaluating a woman exclusively on her present moment presentation. She seems stable, she seems genuine, she seems ready. But that presentation might be a few months old. The person underneath it has been developing for a decade and a half. The longer you avoid examining that history, the longer you stay exposed to what's waiting on the other side of commitment. Women in the dating market after 30 generally fall into 3 distinct behavioral patterns, not because of their age, but because of the decade of choices that preceded this moment. 2 of those patterns will cost you in ways that are very difficult to recover from. One is merely complicated, with problems at least visible enough to evaluate. And there's a 4th, rare but real, that's actually worth your time. Let's name all 4. The first pattern is the most dangerous precisely because it's the hardest to detect before commitment is secured. This woman spent her 20s and early 30s prioritizing access over selectivity, high partner count, casual relationships. She gave her genuine attraction, her emotional energy, her best years to men who weren't interested in committing, and for a long time that worked because attention was abundant. Then around 35, the calculus changed. The men she was most drawn to stopped pursuing, options contracted. Fertility became a concrete concern, and what followed was a strategic pivot, one she may not even be fully conscious of. She starts presenting as traditional. The language shifts. She talks about wanting stability, a man she can trust, building something real. She minimizes her past, gets evasive when you ask direct questions about her relationship history. Her friend group looks nothing like the woman she's claiming to be. Her social media history tells a story that doesn't match her current presentation. And the transformation became apparent right around the same time her options did. Here's the mechanism underneath it. This is not transformation. This is loss aversion repackaged as values. Real growth requires full accountability for past choices, not blame displacement, not selective memory, not victimhood. What you're looking at is a strategic adjustment to changed circumstances. The performance exists to secure commitment. The moment commitment is secured, the performance ends, because it was never who she was. It was a response to a problem. The deeper damage is what actually follows you into the marriage. Pair bonding, the psychological capacity to genuinely attach to and feel satisfied by one partner, is shaped by how it's been used. That mechanism doesn't reset with a new man and new intentions. A woman with a long history of casual connection is statistically far less likely to fully bond to a man she chose primarily for security. And if you're the man she settled for because better options stopped being available, you will feel that. Not in one moment, in 1,000 small ones, every day. The second pattern is less intentionally deceptive, but equally incompatible with what most men actually want from a marriage. This woman spent her 20s and early 30s building a career. She delayed everything relational. She told herself she had time, believed she could sequence it. Build first, then add the relationship piece. And she executed. The career is real, the income is real, the autonomy is real. What isn't real is her expectation that she can add a husband to an already complete life without changing anything fundamental about herself. She's been fully self-directed for 15 years, answering to no one, structuring her life entirely around her own priorities, and now she wants partnership, but on her terms. Equal say in every decision. A career that remains the center of her life. A man who integrates into her existing structure without requiring genuine compromise. Marriage isn't an addition to a complete life, it's a reorganization of priorities, and she's built an identity that cannot survive that reorganization without experiencing it as loss. You can spot this pattern in the checklist: specific income thresholds, inflexible height requirements, status criteria. She's approaching a life partner the way she'd evaluate a professional hire, because that's the only selection framework she's had enough practice with. Past the checklist, what you find is two people cohabitating with entirely separate centers of gravity. Coordinated schedules, split bills, occasional intimacy, no actual merger of lives. When children arrive, if they arrive, the structure collapses, because children require someone to consistently deprioritize themselves. She has 15 years of identity built around the opposite. Something breaks. Either the marriage or her. Either way, you're inside it. The third pattern is the most visible, which is exactly why men tend to underestimate how much it actually costs. She's been married before. The marriage failed. Now she's in the market again, usually with children, always with a psychological imprint from that failure, and always with an ex-husband who becomes a permanent fixture in your life the moment children are shared. The visible complications you can assess going in, the co-parenting dynamic, the financial residue divorce leaves behind, the children who didn't choose this situation. What you can't see as clearly is the invisible damage. And that's what decides the outcome. Why did the first marriage fail? That question is diagnostic. If the story is entirely about what he did wrong, how he failed to provide, how she was wronged, you're looking at either a genuine lack of self-awareness or a managed narrative. Either is a problem. Women who've actually processed a failed marriage sound different. They name their contributions. They describe what they chose and what they'd choose differently. They carry the failure as information, not as injury they're still bleeding from. How she talks about the ex tells you whether she's actually moved forward. Residual intensity, rage, obsession, or idealization means she hasn't. She's still emotionally tethered to that relationship. You won't be her partner, you'll be a distraction from it. The statistical reality of second marriages surprises most men. The failure rate exceeds 60%. The same patterns that contributed to the first failure don't disappear because there's a new man in the picture. They transfer, unless significant internal work happened in the years between, and you need evidence of that work, not just claims. You're inheriting the same dynamics that ended the first marriage. Here's what most men are actually asking beneath all of this. Is there a version of this that works? Is there a woman past 30 worth committing to? Yes. But she's genuinely rare, and you need to know what you're looking for. She's a woman who wanted long-term commitment in her 20s, pursued it selectively, and simply didn't find the right match. Not because her standards were unrealistic, not because she was avoiding men, but because she was genuinely selective about compatibility. Low partner count, no children, values consistent across her adult life, not recently adopted because options tightened. The way you identify her is not through what she says, it's through consistency across time. Her present matches her history. Her social media history doesn't require explanation or spin. Her friend group reflects the values she claims. She can talk openly about her past, including relationships that didn't work, without flinching, without redirecting blame, without defensiveness. She owns her part in what went wrong. She describes what she learned without performing a transformation she has no evidence for. She's not trying to convince you she's changed. She's showing you she's been consistent. Her expectations are proportional to what she brings. She's been patient because she knows what she's looking for, and she's still applying that discernment to you right now. The problem is that for every woman who genuinely fits this profile, there are many more performing it convincingly. The surface presentation can look identical. The distinction lives in verification. You look at the history, not the pitch. You ask direct questions and pay attention to what evasion is communicating. You take enough time to see the pattern, not just the opening performance. Before I close, 3 questions worth sitting with honestly. When you've committed to someone in the past, how much of that was based on verification versus assumption? How much did you actually confirm versus how much did you accept because you wanted it to be true? If you asked a woman you're currently interested in to walk you honestly through her 20s, her choices, her patterns, her relationship history, what do you imagine her reaction would look like? And what does that reaction tell you? Have you ever confused the performance for the person, stayed longer than you should have because the opening chapter was good enough to generate hope? What was the actual cost of that confusion? Reading a person accurately requires patience most men haven't been taught to apply here. You've been conditioned to act on attraction and optimism, to evaluate the version of someone who shows up in the first few months. But patterns don't lie. History doesn't lie. And the work of reading both isn't cynicism. It's the due diligence you'd apply to any decision this significant. A bad commitment costs more than no commitment, in time, in years you don't get back, in damage that accumulates quietly. The patience to investigate before you commit is the protection you owe yourself. Alpha Lens mindset here. Thank you for watching. Stay sharp.